It's a move that should have happened months ago. House Republicans are finally expected to remove Conference Chair Liz Cheney from her leadership position tomorrow. Cheney, the third most powerful Republican in the House, has become a media darling, obsessed with attacking former President Trump. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy recently turned on Cheney. Just last week, he was caught on a hot mic bashing her.
I think she's got real problems. I've had it with it's, I've lost confidence. Well, someone just has to bring a motion, but I assume that will probably take place.
However, months ago, after Cheney voted to impeach Trump, Republicans in a secret ballot overwhelmingly voted to keep her in power. Here's McCarthy after that vote.
We just had a very good conference, members together, but the number one thing that happened at this conference was unity. Let me let the whip talk, and let me let Liz Cheney, our conference chair, who just got a resounding shot in the arm.
Steve, I think removing Cheney is a good first step, but what about McCarthy? All eyes are on him right now.
Right. I think we have more house cleaning than just Liz Cheney. I do think we need new leadership, and McCarthy needs to be replaced. And I'll tell you why. I'm going to give you two reasons. One, we just played right there, is how long he stood by Liz Cheney. And one thing I have to say about Liz Cheney, the only credit that I will give her, she's been remarkably consistent. She didn't change in recent weeks. She was acting and speaking in early February when we played that clip just the same way she is now, and yet McCarthy voted for her and supported her. To me, the second element that really calls into question the ability of McCarthy to become the Speaker of the House is this entire controversy with Frank Luntz and their alliance, both personally and professionally, to me is disqualifying. But look, let me say this. I think there's something more important going on here than McCarthy. What's going on is we're starting to see the America First agenda institutionalized in the leadership of the Republican Party, in the House and elsewhere in Washington, D.C. And that is great news. And so to discuss that, I want to bring in former White House Chief of Staff and former Congressman Mark Meadows to discuss. So, Mark, I want to ask you about that process. You know, those of us in the America First movement came to Washington, D.C. as renegades, as outsiders. Naturally, it takes time for some of the legacy Republican establishment folks to lose their power and to lose their leadership positions. Is that what's going on here, though, with Cheney hopefully being moved aside? Is that we are institutionalizing the America First takeover of the Republican Party?
Well, Steve, that's exactly what you're seeing. What we will see tomorrow is Liz Cheney will no longer be the conference chair. But that's only part of the battle. And you were right. Your analysis is spot on, because the real battle is who is going to ultimately be the one that calls the shots here in Washington, D.C. The America First agenda says that it should be we the people. It should be your viewers, the people that are from all over coast to coast, from Maine to Florida, from Kentucky to California, and in between. They should be the ones that should actually be calling the shots. And what we see is Liz Cheney and others are trying to battle and say, let's take it back to the way it used to be before Donald Trump was ever president. But I can tell you there's no turning back, but we have to stay focused and keep the message the main thing.
Mark, as we look towards 2022, I certainly don't see a path forward for Cheney in terms of re-election. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't. I think not only does she have problems polling, we've looked at polling in Wyoming in her state, but really when you start to think that there are more Democrats that are quoting Liz Cheney than Republicans, you got a problem in a state that the president overwhelmingly won. In fact, Wyoming, I believe, gave him the greatest margin of victory of any state in the United States. And so she has a real tough challenge. It'll be a primary challenge that I think the people of Wyoming will certainly rise up and say they've had enough of Liz Cheney.
Mark, I want to get your reaction to this. We have some sound of Senator Bill Cassidy, his comments on Cheney. Let's take a listen.
If you look at polls, there's a whole group of folks that agree with Liz Cheney. And so for us to win in 2022 and 2024, we need everybody. We need those who feel as Liz.
Yeah, that's spoken
People like
like
Liz Cheney. I mean, what do you say?
Listen, that's spoken like a guy who just won re-election and is not up for re-election for 6 years. It's amazing how brave and bold some of these senators get once they've just come through an election process. But I can tell you the people of Louisiana do not agree with Senator Cassidy. And if he continues that kind of rhetoric, they'll send him home, whether it's in 6 years or before.
Chief Meadows, I want to drill down on this point because I do think it's crucial. There are elected officials, and there certainly are a lot of cheerleaders in the establishment media who want to believe that there's a Republican establishment wing of the party among voters. But when we look at the data, whether it's polling data or whether it's real election data, like we just saw in the 6th congressional district in Texas, what we find is that the Republican Party is thoroughly an America First party at the voter level.
Well, it is at the voter level. Some of the back and forth that you see, Steve, and you're right to look at just the 6th district of Texas. That's a swing district. If there ever should be an establishment district, that should be the district. And yet what we saw was that it was the president's endorsed candidate that once again came in first. But it's more than that. What we're looking at are the big donors. And so what Washington, D.C. is trying to do is go out and reach out to some of these big donors and say, listen, we can be the party of genteel country club Republicans. You and I have both seen what has happened at those rallies. We're reaching people that never were possible Republican voters in the past. They're hardworking American men and women, many of them union voters who came across to vote for Republicans, perhaps for the first time. And so the party is forever changed, but ultimately, Washington, D.C. needs to see this.
No, it's a great point. We are winning over converts constantly to the movement. People who were Democrats before, who were not political at all before, Hispanics all over this country. The movement is young and growing. We need to focus on that and not the donor class and not legacy office holders, people like Liz Cheney. And unfortunately, now with that new tape, Senator Cassidy. Mark Meadows, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Great to be with you both. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.